And I want to welcome everyone to this 6 p.m. session for Northeast Ohio Parent Camp and Summer Programs Fair. Our first ever virtual fair. We have our live events coming up on March 20th and 28th. You can learn more at northeastohioparent.com. I'm Brad Mitchell, the publisher, founder of Northeast Ohio Parent. With us is Angela Gardner, our editor and our content manager for this conference, as well as Katie Bryan, who is with Skylight Financial. A couple of housekeeping items. We are going to be running this session until about 6:40. There'll be a presentation and a time to ask questions. You can do that through the chat area. Please make sure your microphones are muted. And there's also, as I mentioned, this session will be recorded, so we will be sending out an e-blast on this next week and also be posting on social media. So without further ado, Katie Bryan is a certified financial planner with Skylight Financial Services. And Katie's going to share more with you about who she is, her background, and we're going to talk about saving money and getting the kids involved too with being frugal and learning the right way how to manage finances, because these camps generally do cost money. And we want to be a partner with everyone to understand how best strategies to do it as a family endeavor. So Katie, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Brad and Angela, and to Parent Magazine for having me today. This is great. And I went to some of the earlier sessions today. So if you are also on those sessions, you've got a lot of knowledge on camp. And it's really crazy because I can't believe we're talking about camp already. Yeah. I'm a financial planner with Skylight Financial Group. I've been a planner for over 10 years now. I was a career changer. So I actually have a doctorate in neuroscience and did some basic science research for a long time before I changed careers. But I, like you, I have two sons who are 9 and 12, and they also attend summer camp every single year. And I remember my first camp year was crazy because I didn't know anything about how to sign up for camp or anything like that. And so I think we ended up doing it last minute, paid a premium to do that. And so today, what I really hope that you get out of this will be some tips and tricks on how to really plan for camp, financial things that you can do to save for camp. And then at the end, we're really going to focus in on how do you get your kids involved in saving and understanding money. And so that can be for camp, but it can be a lifelong lesson as well for anything that they may want or need. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I will make sure to monitor those too. Let me bring up my screen though and share. There we go. So the big question with camp is we love camp and we hate camp. And the reason we love camp is because it gives us typically some time away from our kids in the summertime. They love camp because they get time away from us, and especially after COVID and everyone being at home, they're probably really excited about camp this year. But the problem with camp is just sometimes it's expensive, and if it comes up upon us and we haven't planned for it, it can become pretty costly and expensive, or we might not be able to afford it, or we may not be able to send our kids to camp. So we don't want that to happen for sure. As you have learned today, and if you haven't, you can go back and see some of the other speakers that were spoke today, but there's all different kinds of camps, right? So there's different community centers that have camps. You have religious and church camps, sports camps, private camps, special needs camps that are a whole variety, day camps, overnight camps, experiences, culture camps. You can go to the art museum, you can go to the Lego store. There's all different kinds of camps, right? And so really when you're thinking about camp, you of course always want to start with what are your kids going to enjoy and what do they want to do? So that helps to bring them into the conversation, which will be important towards the end of our talk today when we talk about them actually wanting to save for their own camp. But these camps not only differ in the types of camps, but some of them are more expensive and some of them are even free. So really, depending on what kind of camps you're looking for, if you are part of a member of a church or, an organization, you may want to start there if you're looking for some discounts or even free types of camps, whether they be maybe a day camp or a couple hours, but those might be enough to help you in figuring out what camp makes sense for your child. Cost of camps, right? They can average anywhere from $0 all the way up to $500 per week, right? And so it was interesting because I was talking with another mom before this, and we were talking about how, sometimes that camp, if you do a 10-week camp for a couple kids, like my two boys, right, that can be $5,000, $6,000. So you want to really figure out what can you afford, right? And so a lot of times we back into what can we afford or what do we want to set aside for camp from a savings standpoint, rather than opening up the can of worms and saying, these are all the camps that are available to you, children. They pick the most expensive one. And then all of a sudden you have to go back and tell them like, hey, we just can't afford that one. So do your research first and figure out what do you really want to put towards camp, and then give them the menu that fits within that camp cost, right? When we're thinking from a planning standpoint, we really want to think about what is the cost of camp, how many weeks is that, and then how many weeks until I need to either put the down payment on that camp or the deposit, or can I pay all at once in May or June when the children are out of school? Depending on when you actually have to pay or want to pay, you want to break down in weeks how much you need to set aside for that camp if it's not already allotted in your planning. All right. So really having a plan will help you be less reactive and will help you stay off of the credit cards, which now are going to charge you an interest rate as well as the camp cost. So the more that we can either stay off of the credit cards or put it on the credit card for points, but then pay it off within the same month, those are great ways to stay financially stable versus putting it on a credit card and then hoping to pay it all off in the summertime. Okay. So this is how I often feel when I get the camp bill or when I'm signing my kids up for camp, like, oh my gosh, this is so much money, or oh my gosh, like, is this really worth it? Maybe I should just stay home all summer instead of working. That might make it a little bit more beneficial. So instead of having this reaction, we can start to do things like plan. So one big key as a financial planner is if your kids are quite young, so maybe they're 2 or 3 years old, or maybe they're even 5 or 6 years old, but you know that you want them to go to camp and you know that you want them to have the camp experience. Well, put that into your financial plan every single year. So if you have a financial planner, make sure that you're working with them. And as you're working on the income that's coming into the household and the average expenses, that they are incorporating that camp cost for the summer into your financial plan. So if you know it's going to be $2,000 for the summer to go to camp, you want to make sure that's incorporated year over year over year in your plan so you can see from an income, expenses, and fixed expenses what actually needs to be saved. And if it's doable to do that kind of cost for your camp, right? So long-term financial planning should incorporate that, just as you would incorporate daycare or aftercare. Those are things you would want to consider when you're talking about camp. So same thing for building your financial plan. A lot of times camps have either day programs. So it might be you drop your child off at 8, you pick them up at 3, right? And if you're a working parent or a part of a household with 2 working parents, that may mean you need the aftercare program or the pre-care program. And those typically cost extra. So try to figure out realistically in your family unit what will work and what won't work from a timing standpoint of when your children are at camp, and build that into your long-term financial plan. Okay. So there's really 3 components to saving on your camp experience. It's start early, plan and calendar it out, and do your research. If you do those 3 things, you are likely to save dollars on camp. Okay. So let's start with start early. right? Most camp brochures, documents, online information come out in February, sometimes even January. Sometimes the year before in October, I even get a memo that says, don't forget, in January, we're going to be sending out the camp information. So look in January or February for those camp brochures. So when I was a newer mom and it was my first time signing up for camp, I didn't look until June. And by June, it was almost too late. I was kind of scrambling to figure out where my kids were going to go. There were places that I wanted them to go that were already filled up, right? Other places said that if because I was signing up late, that I had to pay kind of an extra fee to do that. So you want to apply early and you want to get into the camps early. The earlier you sign up, typically, the more likely you are to get into the camp. And two, you're most likely to have a discount. So a lot of camps will provide you an early bird special where they'll give you, 10% off of your total camp experience if you sign up by a certain date like March or April, right? So put it on your calendar every January or February to look out for that information coming from the camps, and know that your time frame then for saving is going to probably be February to February. Okay, so most people think in calendar years of January to December. What I want you to think about, and then from a camp perspective, a lot of families think of it as June to June the next year. But realistically, we need to save from February to February. So as you're building out your savings plan, think of it from a February to February standpoint instead of a June to June standpoint. All right, this will allow you to save dollars. It allows you to talk with your kids about the cost and let them start to save, which we'll talk about. And if a lot of times if you pay all of the money up front, you get even more of a discount. All right. The other thing is free camps fill up very quickly, as you can imagine. So the earlier you really catch those and you start to look for free camps, like I know Ohio State has a free camp that's a science camp. It's a couple days, but that's a couple days of free camp, right? So find those free camps, but those are the ones that fill out quickly. So the earlier, the better. Calendar, determine when they're going to be out of school, right? So this is less of a financial standpoint, but more of a planning standpoint. So when we look at the calendar, I just said to look at February to February for the actual saving and paying for camp, right? But then when we're looking at the calendar, look at how many weeks you need camp, right? So are there weeks where you're going to be on vacation? Are there weeks where you're going to be home? Or maybe you only need camp every day for 3 or 4 weeks. So figure out what camps fit your schedule. So what happens a lot of times when I'm working with families is they'll just sign up for camps and then they'll realize, oh, we're going on vacation the end of July. And I didn't realize that and I signed my kid up for camp. Well, there goes maybe $100, $200 that they didn't realize was going to be gone because they're going on vacation. So make sure you look at your calendar. And if you're like me, kind of sometimes, summer gets scattered and those kinds of things happen. Right? Like I said, if you need pre-care or aftercare, how much extra is that cost? And are there discounts, again, for signing up early or for having a certain number of weeks of pre-care or aftercare? Do you need to take any time off in the summer, right? So in the financial plan, you want to make sure that if you have to take time off, how is that going to impact the income and the outflow of what's coming into the household, right? And determine when the camp is offered and scheduled, or determine what weeks you will need to fill for that child. All right, but the best way to save money is to research. Okay, and I know all of us, we don't have time to research, and that's why this camp is such a great thing that Parent Magazine is putting on. And you can go to their website, and I know they're going to have lots of information there too about looking for camps. But researching is really the best way to save money, right? There's not a ton of different resources that are out there for helping pay for camp. So you have to be somewhat early and you have to be creative. So the first thing is you can look for scholarships or financial aid. Whatever summer camp you are looking at, you should always, 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 always look online and see if they offer scholarships. And if you don't see it online, you should call them and ask them. Some of them are not as forthright in telling you like they offer financial aid and scholarships because they have so many people then that want to apply. So you want to be able to make sure that if they do offer them, even if they don't have it on their website, give them a call and ask them. A lot of times they do have some funds that are set aside for financial aid for families who are really looking or struggling to get their kids into camp. Okay, so that's the best way. Cultural scholarships. So there are some cultural scholarships out there that will provide some camp funds to you, depending on maybe your religion, on your background. So look for different cultural scholarships as well. This year, there's probably going to be a few more virtual camp options than there were in past years. And so those virtual camp options may be a little less expensive than those in-person camps. And so as we're kind of shifting from this COVID world to the non-COVID world, in June, you may still see some camps offering a virtual or in-person option. And the virtual option, even though they may be at home and not getting those social things, if you are unable to get them to an in-person or you don't feel comfortable taking them in person yet, then look for those virtual camps because they're probably going to be a little less expensive. Anything that is cultural and is funded as a nonprofit or is funded by the community, like museums and art centers and community centers, their programs are typically going to be more cost effective and less money for you than other programs at maybe larger institutions, colleges, and things like that. So work within your budget and really figure out what makes sense for you. If you are at work and you have a FSA at work, then you can use that to pay for summer camp. All right. Now, FSAs, not everybody offers those. So it's a use it or lose it. So you have it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. If you put dollars in there and it continues to grow because they can be invested, then you can use those and they're tax free as you use them for dependent care or summer camps. All right, so those are great ways to save some money on taxes and on dollars to pay for summer camp. Some camps do allow you to have a tax credit, right? Typically, that tax credit is only available if you're working and you're kind of using the camp as a daycare. So you'll want to either talk with your CPA or you'll want to talk with the camp to see if that tax credit is available through the camp that you are working with. For children who have special needs, stable accounts, which are ABLE accounts, the stable account here in Ohio is a great way to put money aside. Those funds are going into an account through the state of Ohio or through a bank, and it's called a 529 stable account. And it's used for children who have special needs or adults with special needs. And the money goes in from your checking or savings, so after tax. It can be invested into the account, either in like a cash money market account, or it can actually be invested into Vanguard accounts. As that money needs to be used, when you use those dollars for special needs and camp is included in there, then those dollars can come out tax-free for that cost. All right. So that's another great way to be able to save for children who have children with special needs. Grandparents, right? If you have wonderful grandparents who always want to give that extra 10, 20, $100, whatever it is that they want to give, then each grandparent can actually gift up to $15,000 per year, each person, each grandparent per year per child. And that's a gift tax credit. So they don't have to pay taxes on that. And the child also does not have to pay taxes, nor do the parents. Right. So if you have grandparents, and a lot of the conversations are shifting now from the old way of thinking where grandparents would say, I will just save all my money and I will gift it after I pass. More grandparents, because they're living a lot longer, are saying, well, I want to see my grandkids actually use the money. So talk with your parents if you feel comfortable. It's not always a fun conversation sometimes, but if you have grandparents that like to give funds or want to give money, then ask them, to donate some money. It doesn't have to be 15,000, but maybe it's a couple hundred, who knows? Some camps have payment plans. So if you can't afford, the lump sum upfront cost, then ask them. Again, this may be more of a phone call to just say, hey, I'm really interested in your camp. My son really wants to go there. I can't do the full tuition right now. Do you have a payment plan that I can pay you over the next 2 months to make sure that I can make that payment on a specific date and time, right? Now, with some of those payment plans, typically they don't have interest associated with them, but you want to make sure that you understand that if you're doing a payment plan, are there any other fees or charges that might be coming along with doing a payment plan instead of doing the lump sums? Other things that I've heard people do is sometimes they'll just say, I can't afford this camp, or I can't afford all of it, but I can do some of it. Is there a way that I can volunteer and be a volunteer for the camp? Is there a discount for volunteering, right, for my child? So sometimes they'll give a discount or, for 10% off or 20% off for that child, as long as there's a volunteer that's working within that camp. All right. Other things that you can do are, just from a mental standpoint, we typically kind of silo how we think about our money. That's how most people think. But most of those people that get tax refunds are real excited about the tax refund. But think about it from a camp perspective, that if you really want your child to go to camp and you typically get $1,000 refund, instead of using that to pay off a credit card bill or something else, you may want to say, well, I'll take part of it and pay off the credit card and part of it and pay towards the camp. So utilize the funds that are coming in throughout the year. When we're doing planning, it's really important for you to do a budget. And we don't get taught how to do a budget very well in school, if at all, right? So unless you're a business or finance major, most people don't understand or learn how to do budgeting. But when you do a budget, you want to do a budget from an annual perspective. Most people think of budgeting from a month to month. So, I have so much money coming in per month and my fixed expenses are so much money going out per month. But then we forget about camps and we forget about gifts at Christmas time or holiday time, right? So those extra costs are where it's called, I call them the gotcha, right? Where credit cards gotcha because you didn't save enough for them. So use your tax refunds and use all of what you're going to get per year, and then build your budget around all of the costs per year. All right. Any questions? I didn't check the chat. Any questions that are out there? I don't think I can see in.
Katie, you can hear me?
Yep.
So one thing that comes to mind is when we have families that have one child, life's pretty simple. You've got 5 children, you've got co-parenting going on.
Yep.
You've got, you want to be fair but equal, different ages, different stages. How do you balance those concerns? And then you've got also the kid that says, don't pay for me for camp, just give me the money instead. There's always one in the bunch, right?
There's always one, right?
We had a situation where my son wanted to be in a lot of things. He was very active in the sports. And so we actually had him, his birthday was July. So a couple of years, we actually said, you really want to do that really good camp, that's your birthday present. So that worked pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good answer to kind of that first part of that question. If you have 5 kids, right? And it's, well, how do you figure out? Well, I think one, it just depends on the age of the child. So if you have young kids and that you maybe you're working and you aren't going to be able to be there, then the camp turns more into a daycare for some families, right?
Yeah.
So if you have older kids, they might have to step back because you may need to just have the extra care there per day for that camper. But I do think it is, the older the kids get, and we'll talk about that in this next section of helping your kids save for themselves, but the older that they get, the more equity or the more money they should really start to put a little bit more into it. The younger they are, they're not going to have a lot of money, but maybe grandparents, that's where grandparents come in, or that's where birthday money comes in. It's not an easy task. When you start getting past 2 or 3 kids, yeah, it becomes that's when you start saying, yep, kids are super, super expensive. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Helping your kids save for themselves. So this is really a great lesson. And I wish that when I was growing up, I would have learned these lessons that we're going to talk about now, and just how to think about money, right? The issue and the reason, the good thing is that I have a job is because we have so many different philosophies around money, right? Everybody grew up with a different philosophy on money. So I always say everyone comes to me as a planner with the same concerns and questions. How do I pay off my debt? How do I save for retirement? How do I pay for camp? How do I pay for college? They're all the same concerns. The difference is how they think and how they grew up with money, right? So most people have grown up with one parent that was hush hush about money. So don't ask dad what he made, because dad's going to say it's none of your business, right? Maybe mom wasn't the breadwinner and dad was the breadwinner, but mom really didn't understand a lot of the finances. We see that still quite a bit. So it's all changing, and more people are starting to have more conversations about money, but how we grow up with money, talk about money, and talk to our children about money really shapes how they think. So a lot of times when we have penny pinching parents, I see one of 2 things. Either their children, the adults that are coming to me, are penny pinchers themselves and do really good at saving. But a lot of times what I see is it kind of rubber bands, and people say, well, I never got anything because my mom was such a penny pincher, so I'm just going to spend, 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 and then they have a ton of credit card debt, right? We don't educate our kids about credit. We don't educate them about credit cards. So these are ways in saving for camp, although it seems somewhat simple, these are ways to really teach a lot of good lifelong lessons. Let me see, get it back here. So remember, as you're talking to your kids, depending on what age they are, most younger kids think in pictures, right? So they think in pictures. They're not going to be able to understand. You have a checkbook of like all these different things, income, outcome, or outflow. So put it in pictures and make it pretty easy for them. Easy math, right? The younger they are, the easier the math we want to do. How many pennies? If I have 1 penny and then I put 2 pennies together, how many pennies is that? It's 2 pennies, right? And talking about wants versus needs. So I say this is a human problem, not a child problem. This is an everyone problem, right? And that's why Amazon is doing so well, because we go on Amazon and we say, do we need that? No, but it's on sale. And we're in COVID, we're okay. We save some extra money, right? So wants versus needs. And then their instant gratification, right? The now, I want it now. So when we're talking about saving for camp, all of these pieces will come together and they'll be learning some new lessons. So here's a quick experiment. So there's an immediate gratification experiment. And this was done by scientists that were, I believe, in Ohio State. And I will get the citation for this one. But in order to figure out if your kids are going to give into immediate gratification or if they're going to be better savers, you can do this quick experiment. And it's not concrete, obviously, but it will help kind of give some insight. So in the experiment, what they did is they took a couple M&Ms and they put them on a plate, and then they left their child there and they said, I'll be right back, right? If when I get back, those 2 M&Ms are still here, then I will give you 2 more M&Ms on top of that, right? But you can eat them if you want, but just know that as I'm gone, then you'll have 4 M&Ms if I get back. And so you leave for kind of, if they're younger, you're going to leave for a few minutes. If they're older, like 7 or 8, you can leave for like 15 minutes and see how long it takes them. But you want probably something a little bit better than M&Ms there. But for the younger kids, what they found is the kids that were able to wait the longer period of time for the 4 M&Ms were typically going to be better at not having to have immediate gratification, right? And if you think about money and what our wants versus what our needs are, that's what a lot of our training is can we overcome that immediate gratification? Can we not use the credit card for something we want when we know we don't really need it. So a couple things. When they're younger, the best way to talk about money is just to have them have pictures of things that they want on a jar, or say, you know, like, what do you really like from this magazine? Do you like this toy? What do you like? You know, if we wanted to save for that and we knew we needed like 100 pennies, you know, how would we do that? And let them kind of learn by touching. They're going to learn by touching the money, moving it, having a piggy bank, right? So they're going to learn, but they might not understand exactly what the value of money is, but they know that if they move more pennies from one jar into another, that they're building more pennies. Okay, so in those early stages, it's just letting them understand the more versus less. Okay, if you find that maybe they do want to have something, you could charge, you know, real little amounts for candy and just say, well, if you would like that candy, we're going to take 2 pennies out, right? And that's how they get to learn about just more versus less. As they get older, 7 to 10, this is the time where you really want to hone in and talk to them about wants versus needs, right? So my 9-year-old loves video games. He wants a video game. I say, well, how much is that video game? It's $40, right? And I say, okay, so if you take $40 from all the money that you've saved from grandma and grandpa giving you birthday gifts or your allowance or whatever it is, how much is going to be left? And he'll say, oh, you know, like $10. And I'll say, okay, so if you take $40 to buy a video game and then you have 10 left, what if another video game that's even better comes out? Then what? Right? So it just makes them think and pause of like, well, something else may be out there. Is this really what I want? Okay. So figure out, what is it that they like? Do they want books, games, video games, Legos, camp, right? So walking them through after you do your research of what you can afford, what you want to pay for. Then for camp, give them the menu and say, like, which camp sounds like appealing to you? Do you want to go to camp? It's going to be really exciting, and build it up as something that they would want to save for. Have them put a picture of whatever the camp is, or the date that camp starts, or whatever it is, and have them begin to fill that jar with the dollars that they're receiving from different people, right? If you want, you can do a family match, right? So every dollar that you contribute, I'll do $2. So it's just like your 401k, right? Every dollar you contribute, your employer is probably giving you a % match. So it's, again, the ability to teach them about, hey, if I give my mom $1, she's going to give me $2 more. Now I have $3, right? So it's that kind of talk. Have them count the money with you, right? We as a society are so good at using our cards for everything, which kind of negates the idea of money, because kids today think money just comes magically on these little plastic cards, right? Whether it's a debit card or a credit card or whatever. So let them count the money, let them feel the dollars and count those dollars with you, so that they can feel that, because that is a tactile sensation that they need to understand how money works. You can start a payment system for them, allowance or a monthly pay by contributing to the household, right? So some people really say, like, you have to do these chores to get an allowance. Other people say, you know what, every month we're going to give you $10 for just contributing to the household, right? But it's not tied to specific things. And if their things don't get done, right, so they're supposed to vacuum the house, or they're supposed to do something, and they don't do it, you have the opportunity to say, we're going to decrease their pay. Okay, so again, another way to allow them to think about money. When they get older, have them, now we're going to add on, we've talked about wants with the little kids. Now we're really going to talk about needs, right? So age 10 to 16, we're saying, if you need, like, a need could be a community donation. Like, we need to donate and give back. So that's a need, which is similar to our need of like groceries and buying food and that kind of stuff. So that's their need. They can have wants at the same time, but they must also have money into savings, right? So this is a big thing that I'm a big stickler on, is that you must put money into savings. So for my children, I say, if you get $10 for your birthday, part of those funds, I don't care how much, need to go into the savings bucket. And they cannot be used except for any of the goals that you're actually saving for, right? So if they're saving for camp, then that might be what the savings bucket is. If they're saving for a video game, well, those dollars in savings for camp can't go towards that video game. Okay. And then at age 16 plus, if they're going to camps or they're doing activities in sports, you know, have them put a portion of their paychecks or into a savings bucket. Open a savings account with them. You can, even if they're working, open a custodial Roth IRA for them so they can have investments. And the parent opens the Roth IRA for the child. Once the child becomes 18, then that child can actually continue to contribute to that Roth IRA. Right? Let them understand how to budget as well. So that's helping them save for everything. And then for camp, right? Let them research on their own. Help them figure out what makes the sense, but also talk about the cost of camp. So little Jimmy, if camp, you know, let's say he's 10 years old. Jimmy, if camp is going to be $500, will we need extra supplies? Will you be going on field trips? What are some of the extra costs that might be in there? What's transportation costs going to be? Are there any extras that you want, right? And then go through and build a monthly budget with them. Things that you can do then are to build a budget to say, okay, if camp costs $500, we know that we have 5 months, we need to save $100 each. I, the parent, will do 50%. You, the child, will also do 50%, right? Supplies, $40, $8 we can save for the month. Child, you are responsible for that. Transportation, I'm responsible for. Anything else, the child is responsible for. So having an action plan in February or January, or even the year before, will help your child understand what they're responsible for and what they're not responsible for. Okay. One thing with this one, just so you all know, is that you have to have a contingent plan of, if your child doesn't save enough money, what will be the consequence, or what will that action plan be, right? Because they might catch on that, hey, mom said that we had to pay for this, but I didn't make it, and I'm still going to camp. So next year, I'm not even going to try. Okay. So have a plan, but then also have a contingent plan of, if they don't make it, maybe that means they don't get 25, you know, that $5 that they saved for other has to go towards camp and isn't going to be there for ice cream cones or whatever it might be. So where will the money come from? That's always the question, right? We can teach our kids how to do all this, but if there's no money coming in, then it doesn't matter. So where will money coming from? Obviously, birthday money, gifts, holiday money, grandparents, right? Ask them for camp as a gift. But if you ask grandparents, aunts, and uncles for gifts for camp, ask them for just part of the money towards camp so that you can use those skills to help your child learn how to save for camp. And then maybe at the end, the grandparents can surprise them with, hey, here's the rest of the money for camp. Okay. Chores or work around the house, part-time job, good behavior, you can reward them. You can buy their gift cards. If they have gift cards to Barnes & Noble that they haven't used, give them cash for their gift card, and then you get to go to Barnes & Noble and use their gift card, but they need cash to be able to save. Use the GoFundMe accounts online or Facebook videos, right? If you're comfortable with that kind of thing, then you can do a GoFundMe account and invite friends and family to help fund their camp experience, right? The more stories you tell, the more you talk about how it's going to benefit your child. If you do a video of your child excited about camp, the more somebody is probably going to donate to that fund, and you will probably reach your goal depending on what that goal is. All right. But you really want to figure out, you want to tell your kids, this is how we're going to look to fund and save for camp, because they need to figure out that it is possible to save. And they need to understand where those dollars might be able to come from, right? It might be lemonade stands, whatever it is, but it will also get their creative juices thinking of like, oh, well, I know that somebody else did this, or I know that somebody went and raked raked leaves and they got $10. So let them be a little bit entrepreneurial too, and how they're going to go about and get these funds. Let them fail. This is the best time to let your kids fail, right? Have a contingent plan, but they will inevitably either fall short, or maybe they won't save, or they'll make a bad decision. So they get $10 and they go and spend it on some toy that breaks in 5 minutes, right? But this is their lesson that they should be learning. All right. And now is a great time to do it because they're not doing it typically with thousands of dollars or credit cards yet. So let them fail. It's okay. So again, saving for camp, I wish I had the magic tree that said, these are the dollars and this is where you get it. But I will say the magic is starting early, being prepared and knowing how many weeks or days you need camp or want camp, doing your research, getting your kids involved, and starting that process with your kids too, of allowing them to save.
Thanks, Katie. That's a really solid overview. There's a lot of information in there, and there's always becomes the contingencies of like, well, my family's a little different, but I think you've laid out some really good, just basic principles that families can apply to so many situations with the family finances. So I might have missed the one point when you were saying about transparency with financials with your children, like, how much do mom and dad make or something, and how much is our mortgage, and how much is this private school, and how much is this camp. I mean, are you advocating that there is some transparency that we should have, and at what age would that be appropriate?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for camp, like you want to use the camp example, like this is how much camp is, this is what it would cost to get to camp. There's everybody's philosophy is different. So there's not one rule of like, yes, you should share everything. But I will say at least allowing your kids to understand that, this is you don't have to even say this is the income, but like if I were to tell you, Junior, that, it's going to cost us $3,000 and that's half of my paycheck for the month, what do you think about that?
Right.
Right. So it just allows them to start to think a little bit more about money. As they get older, I really do think because we're moving into an era where cash money might not be as prevalent and we're using credit cards, that as they get older, having a prepaid credit card that you put money on will allow them to understand how to use a credit card.
Right.
So if you say, I'm going to give you a credit card with $200 and it's good for the 2 months, right? You're not getting any more. Well, if they spend that on shoes in the first 2 weeks, too bad, right? But that's how they're going to learn a little bit more about credit too.
Right. Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people who would advocate for, some of these camp experiences are quote unquote priceless, right? And so it does get to be challenging as a parent to say, well, see, that camp is $79. That one is $479. There's choices we all make, it's not just a pair of shoes, or a better sweater, but it can be a life-changing experience. And
Yeah.
I think, we always spend a little more on camp, each year. And I don't think I regret any of the money that we spent, honestly. And this isn't just an advertisement for go out and spend money on camps. But I think, like you say, if you plan and you research and you think that's a little bit better, wow, that's a really nice opportunity. Maybe you cut short that family vacation by 1 day or stay in the hotel. It's a little cheaper. You're going to be okay. But, the educational and enrichment experiences can truly be life-changing.
Yeah, and everybody is different on how they think about either camp or education, private school, secondary school. So, it all kind of wraps in the same kind of envelope there.
Yeah.
Right. And camp can give kids experience that a lot of times schools can't. And it was especially this year with COVID and so many kids not having those social opportunities. they're not able to have those experiences. And this is kind of a good way to get back into that. I really do like the money, it made me think I need to go and make sure they know how to count money and not just see me swipe.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
that is such a good point. And you made a lot of good points today. And I took a lot away from this. So thank you so much.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
well,
having
this
me.
was outstanding. Yeah, and to our listeners, this will be archived. We'll be sending it back out to everyone. Katie's information was there at the end on that final slide, and she's reachable as well. If you ever want somebody really smart and helpful in your life, she's someone to call, and she could steer you the right direction on your finances. So,
Thank you.
thanks again, Katie.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a great one.
Have a great one. And we got one more session, everybody, at 7 o'clock. Angela, want to tell us about what that is?
Yeah, it's just that it's going to be get your questions answered about camp and how to choose the right camp for your child. We have